Carl from the Office of Emergency Management, a volunteer. Thank you for being here, Carl.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Carl Leon, and as was noted, I'm a volunteer with Seattle's Office of Emergency Management. They're the office that's in charge of thinking about all the things that can go wrong and what they're going to do about them, and helping coordinate the response between various city departments when something does go wrong. And I'm more than 10 feet away from everybody, so if nobody objects, I'm going to lower my mask. Just so you maybe hear me better and see me better.
Yes.
And being someone who is hard of hearing, I know how nice it is to be able to also see the face and the mouth while you're listening to somebody. So if anybody objects, I'll put it right back on. I have a presentation with PowerPoint slides, death by PowerPoint, and I guarantee you'll be asleep before the presentation's over, not really. But I'm going to start with a short video, and this video is available on Emergency Management's website, so if you like it, you want to watch it again, it's easy to get to. This is the entire presentation in about 2 minutes, so pay attention.
Our city may not face a Sasquatch attack anytime soon, but Seattle can experience major earthquakes. What can you do to prepare? Plan ahead. You should be prepared to be on your own for 7 to 10 days. Stash a supply of water, canned food, and other emergency supplies. Oh, don't forget to secure your heavy furniture to walls. When things get unsteady, connecting with others is crucial. Start with a SNAP. Put those furry phalanges away. SNAP stands for Seattle Neighborhoods Actively Prepared. SNAP is a group of neighbors who agreed to work together following a disaster. Members of SNAP groups all bring something different to the table. Plus, you'll finally get a chance to return that drill you borrowed from Barb. SNAP presentations can be requested from the Office of Emergency Management at any time. Once you take care of your home and neighborhood, go to the nearest community emergency hub. Community emergency hubs are locations designated by community members where people can meet to share information and resources in the aftermath of an emergency. Don't have a hub or SNAP group in your community? Contact Seattle Emergency Management to get things moving. But wait, there's more. You can also sign up for Alert Seattle, the city's official emergency notification system. Enroll online to receive free alerts from the city via text message, email, voice message, or social media. Still feel like you aren't ready? Seattle Office of Emergency Management organizes disaster skills workshops all over the city. Learn useful skills like how to use a fire extinguisher, how to care for and respond to injuries after a disaster, how much water to keep on hand, and how to control your utilities. Being prepared for disasters, like an earthquake, is the best way to keep from shaking in your boots. Visit the Seattle Office of Emergency Management website to learn more.
All right. Now I get rid of this. And do this. Great. Come back into the camera view. And we'll talk about emergency preparedness. Maybe.
Oh dear.
Oh, we came back.
Okay.
All right. So as I mentioned, I'm here as a representative of the Seattle Office of Emergency Management, and they're going to fight me. Make sure all my wires are in solid,
That's a good catch. Very good catch. Cat reflex. Yeah.
and see if that matters.
Right, I'm gonna hang out over here.
Okay, maybe it'll stay with us.
Yeah.
Some links for those of you who may like to look things up after the fact. Seattle.gov/emergency is the emergency management website. You can go there and find a gazillion pieces of information. You can email them, OEM, Office of Emergency Management, at seattle.gov. You can email me, carl.leon at seattle.gov. I don't have any objections at all. If you think of something down the road and have questions or want to know more, please do. There's a very handy website I'll talk about a little later in the presentation called hazardready.org. And a personal website of mine, this is not the city's, but I have scanned and saved every handout I've come across in the last 10 years of doing this and put it on a website you can download from if you want to. And some of it's good, and some of it's mediocre, and some of it probably needs to be pulled off of there, but it's still all relative information. If you do go to that last website, it's just a laundry list of files. If you click one, it should open. You can right-click and save as to put it on your local computer. And as the disqualifier again, that's from me, not from the city. So Seattle is vulnerable to all kinds of different disasters, hazards, whatever, and they actually, one of the members of OEM staff sat down and quantified all of the potential disasters that could happen, and then ranked them and sorted them based on a whole bunch of different criteria, and came up with a list, and that's the list. There is only one thing in the United States that's a major disaster hazard that is not on this list, and that's a hurricane, because that's not going to happen here in Seattle. But everything else on this list can and or has happened. We've had tornadoes, we've had winter weather, we've had windstorms, we've had earthquakes, we've had, you name it, it happens from time to time. The order is based on how significant the impact is to us. If we have a major earthquake, it's going to cause more problems for more people than anything else on this list, and probably for a longer period of time. However, everything on the list could cause us problems, so emergency management has plans for everything here. And a friend of mine likes to say, and this is a quote from one of the world wars, "There's no plan that survives contact with the enemy." So they have plans for everything here. It's a good starting point, but at least they have a starting point that they can start working from and building from in response to whatever might happen. Earthquakes, that's the biggie that most people, when I say, what's the disaster we're going to prepare for, everybody says earthquake, because we live in earthquake country. There are two major fault lines that affect us directly. The Cascadia fault line off the Pacific coast, that's a subduction zone type of earthquake. That can produce a magnitude 9 or greater earthquake. That's what happened to Japan about, 10 or 20 years ago or something, that caused the big tsunami. That could happen to the Washington, Oregon, Northern California, British Columbia coasts. Crustal or shallow quake, the Seattle fault line runs right under our feet, downtown Seattle. It runs from on Bainbridge Island across downtown Seattle and off to the east side. And it could produce a magnitude 7 or greater earthquake, and that's a shallow earthquake. It's gonna really probably cause more damage in Seattle than a Cascadia earthquake, because it's a magnitude 7 capable fault line, and it's very shallow, 5, 6, 7, 8 miles deep instead of the next one. Deep quakes could be 50, 60 miles deep. That's like the Nisqually quake in 2001. Very deep quake, 6-point-something magnitude quake, but it was a long ways away and it was a long ways down. And that mitigated a lot the impact of that earthquake. So the Seattle fault quake, here's a rough illustration of where the fault line runs under Seattle, but it would have impact over the entire city. It extends east and west through the city, and it doesn't happen very often. The last one that happened was about 1,100 years ago. They say it could happen every 1,000, 1,500 years, so we're in the statistical time window where one could happen. But the good news is earthquakes don't read calendars, so it could be 5,000 years before it happens again. There's really no way to know. It's been active 3 to 4 times in the past 3,000 years, so we'll see. Maybe we'll see one, probably we won't. The subduction zone or megathrust earthquake, the Cascadia subduction zone runs from mid-British Columbia, or Vancouver Island anyway, all the way down to Northern California. If that rips, if that produces a magnitude 9 earthquake, it will affect Washington, it will affect Oregon, it will affect British Columbia, it will affect parts of Northern California. Usually if we have something go wrong, we can look to our neighbors for help. If this goes wrong, all of our neighbors are going to be having the same problem. So you're not going to get help from the north or the south, you're going to have to wait for it to come over the mountains from the east. This happens about every 300 to 500 years. It's been just over 300 years since we've had a Cascadia fault quake. And that's the only fault line on the ring, of fire, which goes all the way around the Pacific Ocean, that hasn't had a major earthquake in the last 50 years. So again, statistically, the risk is there. Will it happen? No way to predict. But being aware of it would allow us to prepare ourselves should it happen. There was a book about the big one, the really big one, or I forget the name of it, that a lady put out about everything west of I-5 would be toast. And it was a very popular, do you remember the name, Deb?
I thought it was that New York Times article that came out not too long ago.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a book about a Cascadia fault earthquake. It's going to do more damage, or it's going to be worse than earthquakes in California. And it was a very popular book, said everything west of I-5 would be toast. And about a year later, she wrote a qualifier to that book. The book, I think, got her Pulitzer Prize. It was a bestseller. Nobody knows about the second book, which explained a lot of what she was talking about in the first book. So here's a few pictures from earthquakes. The first 3 black and white earthquakes are in Seattle from the 1949 earthquake. That was the Seattle fault quake, about 7.5 magnitude. And the rest of the pictures are from the Nisqually quake in 2001. You can see the type of damage. In both cases, what you see a lot of are falling debris, bricks and material from buildings, land in the streets, on the sidewalks and in the streets adjacent to buildings. Things fall off shelves, they empty the shelves. You have mudslides and landslides. This is Boeing, the runway at Boeing Field. Got a big crack in it from the Nisqually quake. And you know, this is an apartment or an indoor workspace down in Pioneer Square, and the whole outside wall is gone. This can happen in a 6.5 magnitude earthquake. Just some examples of the type of things that you could experience or have happen in a significant earthquake. You don't want to be next to a building when an earthquake happens, because you don't want to be underneath the pile of debris. If you feel an earthquake and you're outside close to a building, either get much farther away fast or get inside fast. There are 2 online tools that can help you explore what hazards you're vulnerable to and what you can do about them. One of them is seattle.gov/hazard explorer, and that gives you an interactive map, and you can go in and zoom in at any point on this map, and it will show you the hazards that are present at that location. The other is hazardready.org/Seattle, and that is a site where you type in your address, and below you see a series of tabs that shows earthquake, flood, landslide, volcano, winter weather, summer weather, and if you click that tab, it's going to open up and show you what amount of risk you have to that at that location, as well as some of the things you can do to mitigate that risk and to prepare should it happen. So a very useful website, both of them are, and I recommend you go ahead and look yourself up in it. Here's your address right here, and again, if you click the various tabs, and I'm not going to go into all of them, it's going to show you the risk, how often it happens, when the next one might happen, and on and on and on. And then as you scroll down, it's going to tell you all kinds of things you can do to prepare, what you should do to be ready for it, stuff like that. Earthquakes, unlike anything else, are really going to wreak havoc on our day-to-day life. If we have a really, really bad earthquake, pretty much all comfortable civilized life as you know it is going to come to a halt for a period of time. You're not going to have electricity, you're not going to have phones, communications, television, internet. Roads are going to be damaged, you're not going to be able to drive probably any place. It's going to really disrupt your life for a period of time. So you're not going to be able to get around. Roads, bridges are going to be damaged. May not be able to get across the ship canal for a while, on foot or in vehicles. Stores are going to run out of supplies. You see what happens in the Gulf Coast and in Florida when they have a hurricane? They know 2 or 3 days in advance they're gonna have a bad hurricane. They clean the shelves of all the stores. We won't know 2 or 3 days in advance that we're gonna have an earthquake, but immediately after the earthquake, any stores that are still standing and have supplies are gonna get sold out almost instantly. And they're probably gonna be cash-only stores because utilities are gonna be damaged. Electricity, water, sewer are probably not gonna be available. If you go most places today, plastic is how you pay for things. Plastic is not going to work after an earthquake because it requires electricity and communications. ATM machines are not going to work. So we're going to turn into a cash-only society for some period of time. Having some cash on hand is part of something you might consider for disaster preparedness. Gas stations and ATM machines are probably not going to work. Any place that takes plastic isn't going to work. Hospitals will become overwhelmed. It says maybe, but in a really major disaster, they will be. It's going to be really important for you to be able to take care of each other. Life-saving first aid is a skill that everybody should have. I don't need an answer to this question, but you should probably know the answer to this question. How many retired doctors and nurses live here? Because they can become very valuable resources after an earthquake or after any disaster. And you should know who they are, where they live, and how friendly they are, and invite them to coffee, etc. Phones, cable TV, and internet are probably not going to work for a period of time. Cellular system's going to stop working for a period of time. Cell sites, all cell sites have batteries, but they're only going to last 24 to 30 hours. Some cell sites have generators. Fuel will last for 2 or 3 days. Roads are going to be damaged, which means they're not going to be able to get fuel trucks to them to refuel. So expect those generators to run dry in 2 or 3 days. And then it's going to be a period of time before those resources start to come back online. Your cell phone's not going to work for a while. And the battery in it's not going to last very long, and you're not going to have any place to plug it in to recharge it. So think about that. What are you going to do if this isn't available to you? We become very dependent on those things these days. First responders may not be able to help you for some time. Right after something like an earthquake, police and fire and utilities are going to go around and do what they call a windshield survey. They're going to assess the entire city as well as they can in a very brief period of time and report all of that information back into their departments, and they're going to start building the big picture of how bad is it and where is it bad in the city. While they're doing that, they're not going to stop to help you. You may see a fire truck drive right by and try to flag them down. They've got a job to do. They'll come back eventually. Once they figure out what's wrong and how bad it is, they'll start prioritizing. How can we best serve the citizens of this community? And this building, with however many people live here, hundreds I'm assuming, is going to be a higher priority than my house that has 2 people. They're not going to come to my house to save 1 life if they can come here and save 50 lives. So they will prioritize the response and start responding as well as they can. But it's going to be a little while before you start seeing that response. The other thing to consider, just like everybody else that works in Seattle, police, fire, utilities, some of them live in the city, some of them live in surrounding communities up to many miles away. If the roads are damaged, they're not going to be getting here. So at any given time, and our law enforcement associates here might be able to quantify this, there are a limited number of police and fire actually on duty in vehicles or fire stations or police stations 24 hours a day. That could be in the low 100s number of total emergency responders that are available if an earthquake happens in the middle of the night or something like that. And it's going to be a while before more resources start being able to respond and helping, building on that. So again, being able to help each other is going to really be important. And they're going to work as hard as they can to respond as fast as they can, but it's going to take a while. So what can you do about all this? I'm not trying to terrify you, but make you aware. And if you are aware, step 1, develop a plan. What are you going to do? And if you think about it in advance, just like I said at the early part of this, no plan survives contact with the enemy. But if you have a plan, you at least have a starting point. Instead of total panic, you will have controlled panic because you can look at your plan and start adapting it to what's going on. How will you reunite with family? A way to contact others. We'll come to more about that in a minute. Alternate routes to wherever you need to go. Home and work, if anybody here is still working and going to and from work, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get back? No plans for work and children's school or daycare. Again, if you work or if you have children or grandchildren that are in school, you should know your employer's plans, your building's plans, your school's plans ahead of time so that when it happens, you don't have to try to figure it all out. Emergency response in schools in Seattle is decentralized to the principal. Each school has to have a plan, but every plan may be a little different from one another. They have reunification plans at every school. If you have kids or grandkids in school and maybe the parents think you're going to pick them up, know what those plans are, know what the requirements are, so that when you get there, you know what's going to happen. What if you have no electricity? Expect that for a while. Does the building have an emergency generator?
Yes.
Maybe.
In the licensed area.
Okay, so, that's probably going to run the elevators and maybe some emergency lights and not a whole lot. It's not going to provide full power to every unit in the building. And again, how long is it going to last before it needs refueling and stuff like that? If you have equipment that requires electricity and it's essential to have it, you need to have some kind of alternate plan, at least to carry you for a short period of time. I use a CPAP. My wife's older sister, who